Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. This is the #1 daily radio show for realtors looking for a no BS, authentic, real-time coaching experience. What's really working in today's market, how to generate more leads, make more money, and have more time for what you love in your life. And now your hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
Welcome back. So today we're going to be talking about the 2024 and 2025 open house rules, crack the compliance code. This podcast was motivated by a lot of you who are expressing concerns about how to actually conduct yourselves and lead generate at open houses. And what we're doing today on today's show is we're really diving into all the specifics and all the the do's and the don'ts. You'll be relieved to know that for the most part, things are going to stay pretty much consistent to the way you're accustomed to doing business, but we are going to help you avoid some of the compliance nightmares. And what we're going to see, Julie and I were just talking about that this morning with a broker, is we're going to see probably the next, I would say 6 months or so, you're going to see a lot of compliance issues that are going to start becoming public. You're going to see a lot of MLSs charging fees. You're going to be seeing a lot of agents having trouble with understanding why they're being called on the carpet for this issue or that issue. So we're doing our best to help you avoid all of these issues, all these potential problems, and a lot of which are going to be associated with some costly fines. So along those lines, here's what we're going to do. We're going to give you this information, and if you want the notes for today's podcast, and all of you will, make sure you subscribe to harrisrealestatedaily.com. That is our daily newsletter, thus the name, harrisrealestatedaily.com. We put our long-form notes at harrisrealestatedaily.com, so you can just go there, download the notes, use these notes for your office, use these notes for your brokerage, send these notes to the agents on your team. Just have these notes at the ready so that you know you are operating off best of breed. And if you, frankly, are a broker or you're a team, you want to have notes or these notes so that you can then, document the fact that you did indeed tell your agents essentially what rules to follow as pertains to open houses. So that is our goal, is to make your lives easier, educate you, motivate you without any further delay. Julie, let's jump in.
That's right. So some of you are nervous about holding open houses in the new, more regulated environment. There is a lot of misinformation about what you can and cannot do these days. And a lot of that is not your fault. Different MLSs, different brokerages, different states. There's a lot of discussion floating around. So we are bringing you this podcast to clear the air, right? So here's your new open house compliance code, and you can go ahead and print these notes from today's podcast in case other agents might be challenging you on these facts. These are all well-researched, straight from NAR and others.
Point number 1, no written agreement required for open houses. And that's the big one that we're reading the most about. As it is interesting too, Julie. Mm-hmm. We always blame the agents for the misinformation, and really I see a lot of it coming from brokers.
Yeah.
And I see a lot of it listing agents, frankly.
Yes.
Inexperienced listing agents. You guys are really needing to catch up on the way these regulations, these new guidelines work, because you are causing all kinds of fear and panic in the marketplace. You're not, just an aside, you're not supposed to ask the agent wanting to show your listings if they have an exclusive signed with their buyer. That's not your job. And you're not supposed to also be muddying the waters when it comes to open houses. You can still have other agents hold your open houses. No written agreement is required. And we're
going to get to that. Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Because there are different versions of open houses, right? It's come up. So point number 1, as Tim said, no written agreement is required for open houses. If a buyer attends an open house without an agent, they do not need to sign a written buyer agreement just to tour the property with you or anybody else. Open house attendees can explore homes freely without any formal obligation because these are considered informal interactions. I think that's pretty clear.
Right. And by the way, this is a great supplement to our open house plan that you get for free in Premier Coaching. I think it's in the first level, isn't it?
It is.
Okay, yeah. So when you sign on and become a Premier Coaching client, just go to premiercoaching.com, premiercoaching.com, or just text the word Premier to 47372. We will give you our complete open house plan. And what this is a supplement, because obviously the rules have changed, to make the open house plan even more relevant. So if you want to have full access to the first level of Premier Coaching, just go to premiercoaching.com or just text the word Premier to 47372. And as always, that does include a daily semi-private coaching call with one of our Harris certified coaches. Your homework from today's podcast, premiercoaching.com, or text the word Premier to 47372. Don't forget to do that, because all of you are going to be motivated to get into action after you listen to today's show. And I've just told you exactly what to do. Premiercoaching.com or text the word Premier to 47372.
All right, now, some of you have asked, what if it's not my listing? What if I am a hosting agent? So, point number 2, hosting agents do not require buyer agreements. Agents hosting an open house on behalf of the listing agent do not need to enter into written agreements with potential buyers attending the open house. This is because the hosting agent is representing the seller at that time and not directly working with the buyer. Again, this is right from NAR, and this has been confusing to agents because if I'm a hosting agent, it's not technically my listing, but it is implied that because I'm holding the listing open on behalf of the listing agent, that I am deemed to be representing the seller.
Why are we big advocates of open houses? Let's just do a supplemental point number 1. And we really do need to make it clear that open houses in a market where there's so much saturation online have become 1,000% more effective than maybe they would have even 10 years ago. And the reason is because what's happened, and you can document this yourself, and Julie, you've had this experience, and certainly Julie and I have talked about this for hours and hours and hours, quite literally, on our podcast.
Yes.
We have over 5,000 past shows. The consumer behavior when looking for a home for sale always starts online. It used to start in the olden days in the newspaper or like these little home magazines. I know those still are in various more rural communities,
yes.
Where you're checking out and there's a home magazine. But yes, so that's where the home search would start. Now it's starting online. So that means your least motivated, least qualified, least interested lead is the online lead, which I think you need to be connecting the dots here. That's the reason, one of the main reasons Julie and I have never been advocates of buying online leads, because they're the worst, in terms of motivation. And you guys spend the most money. Some of you are spending $30, $50, $100 per very unmotivated online lead. And I think personally, that whole the online lead buying, especially for buyer leads, is finally in its
Demise.
Yes, I was trying to think of a more
decline.
Exactly, but because the industry's figured it out,
yes.
And there's been, agents have validated that indeed online leads are the least motivated. Well, there's not. I'm not saying there's not a place for those types of leads, but just understand when you're getting an online lead and you're saying, well, this lead isn't any good, it's because they're online. They're just getting started. Then after that, what people have a tendency to do is they will go to one of the big, they might go to a portal to do more searching. Maybe they did their searching initially online. It doesn't really matter. But after that, then they start honing in on different communities. So almost always people, especially if they're not moving out of state or, across the country or internationally, they're going to live in the same community. They're going to live, the kids want to go to the same school, all those types of things. So what they do after that is they start searching in particular neighborhoods if they hadn't already started doing that. And then those are good searches, those are good leads. And then what happens is the best ones are always the ones driving, looking for the newest listings that aren't yet online. So how consumer behavior has changed is before they would go online and they'd find everything for sale. But now the industry is essentially starting to put, signs in yards and letting people know about homes that are going to be for sale. And agents or rather consumers are then driving the neighborhoods of the communities that they want to live. So by the time you meet somebody in an open house, depending on the price point, a first-time buyer open houses have a tendency to be a little bit less focused. But if you're working in a move-up price range, those folks going through those open houses have already decided they want to live in that neighborhood, in that school district, in that exact community, probably in that exact house. And, the whole thing. So those buyers are going to be the ones that are going to be the most qualified, the most motivated, probably already, done with their financing. And they're going through open houses, which tells you that they're not committed to a real estate agent. And what do we know? Most consumers will work with the first agent that they meet. Now, meet is not online. Meet is face-to-face. And I know some of the online lead sellers have confused you guys over the years that meet includes, dripping on them. It doesn't. It's when someone meets you first time face-to-face. So here you are holding an open house in a neighborhood that they want to live, and you're meeting these guys and you're learning that they have a house to sell in the adjacent community. They're wanting to move before school goes back, all these other types of things. That is a really kick-ass lead. Those types of leads are the ones that you don't need that very many of those types of leads to have an amazing year. You don't have to have that, that number of leads, that many leads to establish yourself in that community as somebody really dominant, especially when you follow our open house plan, which does involve, getting to know the neighbors and inviting them to the open house and things like that. Do you guys get it? It's one thing for a store to run ads, right? A store is going to run billboards. They're going to run online campaigns. It's another thing to show for someone to show up at the store and walk in the front door. Do you see how intuitively you already know what I'm telling you is true? What we're saying are the people that actually are walking in the front door of the store, to buy the iPhone. Those are your buyers. The people that are just researching online, they're just researching online. People walking into your open house, those are real buyers, especially in the move-up price ranges. Does that make sense, Julie?
It absolutely does. And I just want to add a little reminder to you, especially in those move-up price ranges, we can't go without saying that those are listing leads too.
Yep.
Oftentimes people in that very neighborhood, and we used to hear this because, we used to sell real estate for a living before we did this all the time, is they would say, I'm seeing who is working in the neighborhood and I'm seeing which agent who's already here that I like. They are actually observing you. How are you handling that open house? Are you getting good attendance? Are you professional? Don't be surprised when people are secretly interviewing interviewing you via your open house to maybe interview for the listing.
Do you understand what Julie just said? So a lot of your attendees, when you're holding an open house, are going to be neighbors that are knowing that they're going to be putting their houses for sale sometime into the future. They obviously have a previous agent that they bought the house with, but that doesn't necessarily mean that agent just got that listing. But, maybe
Or maybe they're not even around anymore.
Exactly. You get the point? So open houses really are one of the most effective ways. It's essentially like, just going back to the store comparison. Imagine if, for example, Apple could take out billboards in the front of people's houses, right? So in residential communities around the United States, it's now legal for a corporation to pay the owner of the home to put out essentially a mini billboard in front of the house. How much is that worth? Millions and millions, if not billions of dollars. That's how much it's worth, because that is an incredibly targeted ad. That is what you have when you do an open house. That is what you have when you have open house signs that are sprinkled all over the community with your name on them. Julie and I teach you guys how to do in Premier Coaching. We called it the Harris Tour of Homes. Yours would be whatever your name is, Tour of Homes. And then you get these little corrugated signs. You sprinkle them all over the community. Maybe you hold one home open. Maybe you hold 3 homes open all at the same day. Maybe the first home's open from 10 till noon. The next one's open from 12:30 to 2:30. You guys get the point. And then what you'll see are the really motivated folks who are going to be going to all of your open houses. But the main important thing, really what I hope you're internalizing is, especially in the move-up price ranges, most, if not all, of your buyers or all the attendees of the open houses will have homes to sell. So you need to approach all of them as potential listing leads, because they are.
Yeah, think about it. There's not that many instances in real estate where you can have one event and multiple contacts, all of whom probably have motivation on some level or another, and many of whom, in the case of the open house, and to your point, have kind of self-pre-qualified. That's why they're right in front of you on that day, in that house, in that neighborhood. Okay, so number 3 is something that I needed a bit more clarification on, because there's been so much discussion about it. What about personal showings and live virtual tours? Well, written agreements are needed for personal showings and live virtual tours. This is when your open house lead doesn't buy what you're holding open, and now you have made them into a potential client. So here are the rules. Once an agent begins actively working with a buyer, what does that mean? Meaning they start providing services such as identifying properties and or scheduling personal home tours. A written buyer agreement is required before any private showings or live virtual tours. Now, NAR defines a virtual tour as a live agent-guided tour in which the buyer is not physically present. For example, the agent walks through the property using a video communication like Zoom or FaceTime. These types of live virtual tours are treated the same as in-person showings, okay? Keep that in mind.
Hold on. Okay, I see your next point.
Clarification. I know it's confusing.
No, I was about to ask you your next point. Sorry.
That's okay. So what about pre-recorded video tours? They do not count as live tours. So this is the differentiator on this rule, okay? Is it live or isn't it? What constitutes live? Well, a pre-recorded video is not a live tour, so no written buyer agreement is needed for those types of marketing materials, right? So let's say that I got in my text from you, listing agent, a tour that you pre-recorded, and I look at it and I think that really matches, Bob and Betty's needs. I can send that to them without a written agreement because I didn't do it live. I wasn't on FaceTime walking through the house. I think this is a confusing rule, and I'm not sure agents are going to stop and say, wait a minute, am I live or not live? It's a video tour. How does it count? And that's why I wanted to put that in today's show, because I think it is pretty confusing.
I have so many
fundamental issues
with what you just read.
I know.
But it's so insane because really ultimately I'm just imagining how there's going to be some sort of widget that's going to be catching agents doing.
Where's the compliance on this
Oh my
one,
gosh,
right?
it's so nuts. We've talked about this before. Julie and I are doing our best to hold our opinions back on all this litigation. It kind of seeps through occasionally.
Yeah, but they're out there in the wild having to deal with this.
And we can all have our opinions and laugh over a cup of coffee, because fact is, in 6 months, little in 12 months, a lot of this stuff is going to have sorted itself through, and you're not going to necessarily have things that are first, frankly, very confusing, but also, how is any of this in the best interest of the consumer? It just doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, well, but here's the thing, and I've had some discussions with agents about this. What you just said is the very reason that open houses are firing up and getting more action, because the buyers out there also are reading headlines. They're a bit confused, and their reaction has been, well, what if I'm not ready to sign with anybody? I'll just wait for it to be open. I'll just watch the homes in the neighborhood I want to live in, and I'm going to go to the open houses so I don't have to deal with any of this.
Yeah.
So,
that's true. That makes total sense, because a buyer is going to be conflict avoiding. And if the buyer's agent doesn't have the skill set to explain what the benefits to the buyer is from being buyer agent being their exclusive buyer agent, yeah, I can understand why this potential buyer would want to avoid the conflict of having to...
Or the confusion.
Yeah, exactly. That makes total sense. By the way, we are, in the midst of really drilling down on the ethical real estate professional designation. Julie's going to share with you a little bit more information about that. But the great news is that designation should be wrapped up within the next, maybe 2 weeks. Julie and I made a decision. We're not going to rush it to market. We're not trying to make it perfect, but we want to make it so that when all of you guys get your hands on what we've created for you, you will be not just comfortable and confident, but you're going to be excited and motivated because of the new changes with regards to commission sharing. So Julie, point number 4.
Yes, well, and that brings us to this, because of all of this discussion, it brings us to point number 4, clear compensation terms in your buyer agreement. You're not going to have an instance where you can just dodge the agreement. So get that out of your minds. I know some of you are thinking about just skipping it. That's not an option. Any written buyer agreement, which is now required, must clearly outline the compensation terms, whether it's a flat fee or percentage of the transaction. Agents, remember, cannot receive more compensation than agreed to with the buyer in those contracts. So that brings us to what Tim was just talking about and reminding you about. Sign up for your new ethical real estate professional designation and buyer presentation today so that you can get those signatures.
Well, get on the list to be invited to the webinar that we're going to be doing sometime in the next couple of weeks. And the easiest way to do that, really the only way to do that, is text the word buyer, B-U-Y-E-R, to 47372. Text the word buyer to B-U-Y-E-R to 47372. I know. Why can't I just say? It's so weird how I trip over buyer. Anyway, the ethical real estate professional designation is going to be the industry's preeminent designation for agents who really want to embrace the changes. Remember, guys, the greatest fortunes have always been made during the greatest times of change. Is anyone doubting that we're in one of the greatest times of change now? There are so many reasons to be optimistic about what's going to be happening in the real estate future in the next 6 to 12 months and beyond that. Interest rates are going to go down. All the political headwinds are going to be behind us. We're going to be looking for, frankly, a lot more, the inventory up around the country of homes for sale is really through the roof. There's still a lot of buyers that are sitting on the sidelines, a lot of them for emotional reasons, a lot of them, frankly, the reasons Julie just said, because of the confusion. So I want you to imagine you now are comfortable and confident explaining your value and being able to, frankly, be, I would say, even motivated because of the changes in the commissions. Because here's what's happened. There's so many buyer agents out there that don't have the skill set to explain to the buyers why they're going to want to work exclusively with them. So those buyers agents are frankly struggling, and we're seeing it happen. The number of transactions around the country is definitely taking a dip. I don't know about a dive, but definitely a dip, because the buyer agents just simply sent over these sort of onerous contracts to the buyers and said sign it without knowing how to explain it. Because buyer agents really, up until last month, did not actually have to provide explanations as far as how they were being paid. The buyer agent commission was an entitlement to the transaction. Those days are over. You now have to explain to the buyer why you are worth the commission that you're going to charge them and the fee you're going to charge them. And that's something that, frankly, many buyer agents have absolutely no clue how to do that. Well, guess what? We've done it for you with the ethical real estate professional designation. What we've literally done is we presented a presentation and all the forms, all the paperwork, all the scripts, all the objection handlers, everything you could possibly possibly imagine to make it so that when you're meeting with a buyer, you are not even going to bat your eye about getting, but by telling them about what you offer as an ethical real estate professional, you're going to show them what you do. They're going to want to sign with you because you're going to show them, all the things you do to get the homes, to find them a home. You're going to show them all your, frankly, risk reversal guarantees. You're going to show them all the things that you do that are so far above and beyond what a normal buyer agent does. They're going to want to work exclusively with you. This is the time of change that you've been waiting for. Many of you don't realize you've been waiting for it, but you have. You've been waiting for a time in the marketplace where, frankly, someone with skills and ambitions is going to be of a step far beyond the other agents who are, running around in circles, not knowing what to do. Greatest times of change create the greatest opportunities and create the greatest fortunes. Realize that the times are not going to go back to where the seller's just automatically going to be paying the buyer agent commission. You're going to have to ask for it. We're going to tell you how to do that in the form of concession. We're going to show you how to, work it so that if the buyer wants to finance it, they can finance it. We're going to explain how you can explain to the buyers and your sellers, obviously, how you're going to be paid. And it's not something you're going to be nervous about. 12 months from now, the industry probably for the most part is going to be bifurcated. There's going to be agents that have frankly embraced the new skill set necessary in this marketplace and the ones that haven't. Only 50% of all the 1.5 million members of the National Association of Realtors sell homes every year. Do you guys think it's going to be less than that as a percent? Do you think agents selling homes is going to go, it's going to maybe be only 30%? And that means 70% of the agents aren't selling homes? It's possible, isn't it? Because there's going to be the agents with skills and the agents without skills. The past market was greatly dependent on, frankly, who you knew and who knew you. Now it's going to be based on those things and the skills. If you have the, brand, if you have the social media presence, you got a lot of people that know you, but you don't have the skills, you're not going to be doing any business.
That's right. And, a specific change that I've observed before all of the changes became legal back in August and now, back then, agents were saying, you know what? All my business is from past clients, center of influence. They trust me. It's not going to be a problem. The problem has become, because I hear this, I read this, I hear it from the coaches. I've even had a couple of coaching calls myself about this. It's a lot of you guys listening think that this is just a new agent problem with the lack of skill and transparency and presentation and all that. What I'm seeing is actually from some of the more grizzled professionals who have a lot of past clients. And the problem is, you guys are assuming that because they transacted with you in the past that they'll sign anything that you send over. And that's actually creating a problem for some of these more experienced agents, because when you do that and you just text it, you just email it, you don't have a presentation. Remember, the definition of closing, in this case on a signature, is the logical ending to a great presentation. If you're just being assumptive, guess what's happening? Because I see people post, I hear from the coaches, oh, my past client who did 3 transactions with me before seems to be ghosting me. Well, what's caused that? Well, I sent them the agreement. I haven't heard back from them. That's not a strategy.
It's not. And especially if they have done many transactions before. Frankly, first-time buyers are going to give you...
They're easier.
They're easier because they don't have preconceived notions on how business is done. But your centers of influence and past clients, or really anybody that's done a deal before, you put that contract in front of them without being able to explain to the prospective buyer why it is that they want to choose you as their exclusive agent, there's a 0.00% chance that they're going to want to do business with you. And unfortunately, what we're starting to see happen is they're going to run from you. They're going to ghost you. And they're going to go to where? Open houses. They're going to go directly to the listing agents.
Or to a builder.
Or they're to a builder. Or they're going to, discover buyer's agents who are ethical real estate professionals who are taking the time to explain to them what they do and why they do it and why they're worth, the fee, just like listing agents have always had to do. And they're the ones that are going to get all the business. Do you see how this is going to be a with skills or without skills type market? That's the new reality. So get on the right side of history and become the agent with the experience and make the most of what this market has to offer. What other options do you have? So text the word buyer, B-U-Y-E-R, to 47372. Text the word buyer, B-U-Y-E-R, to 47372. In the meantime, we'll talk with you on the podcast tomorrow.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.